Dr. Nazar.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Yusuf, and thank you for the invitation. What I enjoyed from the previous presentations, it was all a good prelude to what I want to present today. Even though I'm going to zoom on something that we want to present as a proposal or an opportunity, it is under vigorous science collaboration for SDGs implementation in developing countries. I'm from UNESCO Cairo office, and what we do for STI collaboration programs in the region, these are actually some examples: SDGs road mapping, decision support expert system, and that is our work with UN ESCWA, UNDESA, UNCTAD, among others. We have a number of capacity building programs, innovation technologies, application promotion, and entrepreneurship. That is with ILO and the national authorities in different countries, mainly the ministries of science and technology and the ministries of higher education. We have a good program for training under STI policies development for parliamentarians and decision makers. We are also working with a number of renowned universities around the world, like Pennsylvania State University, doing new science and engineering curricular development, is particularly in nanotechnology and biotechnology. And all these are kind of virtual programs where people can, in a very cost-effective manner, actually get master's and PhD degrees. Of course, we at UNESCO, we have launched the initiative on open science. And what we're doing here at the UNESCO Cairo office, we are actually supporting a new and innovative portal that can actually help the Arab region with its open science initiative implementation. And we all know that there is a shift from what we used to know as knowledge-based economies to what the world today globally is called creation-based economies. And of course, here is some of the possible barriers to science collaboration. This mouse is working by itself. For example, if we talk about open science movement, what would be the possible barriers here in the Arab region? Of course, there is a huge gap in the number of researchers required, calculated as full-time equivalent per million of the population. Of course, we have a huge number of college graduates each year, and it's a huge wasted resource because these college graduates actually end up spending 4 or 5 years of unemployment before they decide to go somewhere, and it might not be in their area of graduation. Of course, lack of employability for college graduates and the relevant market required skills and the availability of the relevant capacity building programs, forcing many of these graduates as a human resource to enter the ongoing brain drain cycle. With that also comes a huge gap in investment and targeted funds on R&D. None of the Arab countries today spend the 1% mark of GDP on R&D. Everybody is less. And with that, of course, comes the dilemma because the resources are limited. So which research work you should work on? Is it basic? Is it applied? Is it experimental? And maybe just go simpler. Can we actually collaborate on building capacities on well-proven technologies? And that's for the sake of SDGs implementation. Of course, also, we have a huge gap in the number of equipped labs and research centers that work on joint collaborative research projects. And that's why we like the Sesame project, and we want to encourage actually member states to actually take that as a good opportunity. And of course, lack of regional established programs for STEM education for women and youth, because these are also wasted resource if not used. Now, on the other side, for UN SDGs implementation, you have a strong barrier. Again, Africa alone is projected to need about 100 billion a year for the next decade. A high level of inequality between rural and urban areas. Almost 50% of the regional population live in rural areas, while rural areas population also account for 80% of the actual poor population. Of course, the COVID-19, as everybody said, made visible the inequalities across our societies with a clear, huge wealth gap, access to healthcare, and a lack of safety net between the have and have-nots. And of course, that means that existing educational divide has actually widened further for those students who lack access to internet devices and reliable internet services. And that is why we also commend those calling for a strong ICT connectivity. And of course, the international community within the SDGs, they said that they are committed to end extreme poverty, which means that they want to target populations living on $1.25 or less a day. The Global Science Development report in 2019 indicated that those poor communities, they live without quality healthcare, education, clean energy, safe drinking water and sanitation services, nutritious food, and reliable transportation. And these are critical within the target countries and regions. So with all that in mind, UNESCO Cairo office actually, during the COVID era, started thinking that with the outcomes of the different regions' reports regarding the possibilities of SDGs implementation by 2030, we started actually exploring more practical means and tools to achieve the SDGs, not only answering the what question, but most importantly, the how question, by using proven optimization methods and models. And what I'm going to be presenting today as an as a framework for implementation or action, we would be happy to actually to invite all of you to actually give us feedback and advice on how to move this action into implementation. This proposed framework actually calls for developing countries to actually adopt 4 fundamental pillars, and these are for rural areas in a cost-effective manner, and with the given time frame by 2030, they should be able to achieve higher than the 10% of SDGs implementation. I'll go very quickly on those through those 4 fundamental pillars. First of all, there has to be a well-designed poverty reduction and social protection policy. And behold, that has been a call by Aristotle a long time ago, calling that if you want a better, stable, and just society, you need to increase the middle class. And by actually looking at that Aristotle's initiative, we are enacting the principle of leaving no one behind, and that would be done by focusing on the well-being and development of the most vulnerable and most impoverished 20 to 30% of each region's population. And that was a good example implemented in the case of Brazil between 2003 and 2011. So it actually did have enormous positive impact. The second pillar is adopting what we came up with as and called the Pro-Poor Sustainable Consumption and Production Systems Standard, which can carefully guide the community's choice in building the required infrastructure in the targeted rural areas, including the proposed housing projects, transportation systems, efficiency energy systems, among others, in the most cost-effective manner. That is number one, but also create and develop a new full green economy that is completely detached from environmental degradation, as well as the use of any natural resources that would make this proposal to actually compete with the other current global different economies. Now, the adoption of this proper sustainable and consumption systems standard should induce a positive impact on almost all thematic areas of sustainable development, and that would also foster the STI systems. We know that STI is at the heart of the UN SDGs agenda. So the proper would also lend the UN so-called the technology facilitation mechanisms the golden opportunity to achieve its objectives, which are basically the development and training of the critical mass of technical force and practitioners required to be mobilized to support achieve the SDGs in these communities, and of course the creation of a knowledge hub for sustainable development, proven technologies, education, and utilization. It's mainly virtual. We all call for knowledge hubs and excellence centers, but what is to be put in there and practically and effectively lead us to SDGs implementation is important. So this idea would target the municipal communities with all the technical and financial requirements clearly identified to implement the SDGs through carefully predefined set of technology standards. Projects must have policies and programs it advocates for. And of course, this would happen mainly through our strong network of universities, especially the technology universities that we have around, not just in our region, but all around the world. The third pillar is to actually develop an agro-based technopolis to replace most of the rural poor villages and small towns. And by doing that, you're actually helping, giving them quality healthcare, STEM and TVET education, clean energy, and so forth, and which is the social dimension. And in addition, that this would trigger a reverse city to rural migration cycle, which means that those agro-based technopolis would be better than faced by city dwellers, and of course the fourth, not but least fourth pillar is adoption of the cooperative model for governance and finance, where all inhabitants of those technopolis are spontaneously affiliated members. Adopting the cooperative model will facilitate better commodities flow and improve the opportunities of financing and microfinancing of all activities within those technopolis, and that is the economic dimension.
Dr. Nazar?
Aywa?
Sorry, but yes, 2 minutes, please.
Okay, I will not go into details on how the proper sustainable consumption production systems standard work, but I will give an example, a good example for the housing. Depending on the tenants, each of the technopolis will consist of a number of high-rise buildings with enough apartments to accommodate the number of families. But by doing that, each tall-rise building will allow for making use of wind regimes at high altitudes for continuous energy production. Some buildings will use solar chimney concept to produce both energy as well as enough heat to desalinate brackish water. Each building would also have the necessary basic services, and these are in each building there are designated spaces for research centers, schools, health clinics, sports country, sport courts, and a huge marketplace and a dining commons which could serve at least one nutritious meal a day. This is for example, ability to produce 250 kilowatt of electricity, ability to produce sufficient drinking water, using aquaponics system to produce nutritious food. All building furnitures are made of cement, precast, granite, stone, and PVC. All doors and windows are made of PVC. And so you see that in terms of environmental commitment, it's very committed to environmental dimension. Buildings are fitted with water efficient gadgets using LEDs, new innovative super efficient AC central system, and all tenants will therefore have clearly marked and identified fixed addresses, which is a requirement for secure bank loans. These are kind of a model for the for those housings. And by the way, the framework actually follow closely the UN Decade of Action to deliver on the global goals, the local action, and the people's action as well. Universities and research centers need to support the development of these technologies, education, and utilization hubs. And as I said, maybe 5 suggested quick key messages. International community should be focusing on the well-being of the 20% impoverished people. High-speed internet connection is important. The creation of a series of knowledge hubs is important. Adoption and implementation of this sustainable consumption production system standard, and the development of agro-based technopolis. And by doing that, we could be actually practically looking at the implementation of the SDGs, maybe not by 2030, but 2050. But within 2030, we could have easily reached a 40 to 50% implementation rate. And I think that would be the end of my presentation. And I thank you for listening.